We have a massive Raptors injury updates. It seems like OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., as well as Thaddeus Young will all be back in action this Thursday, and that's going to lead to some tough decisions for Nick Nurse, as we have to figure out who's going to be in our starting lineup after the acquisition of Jakob Poeltl and all of our guys, our key players, returning healthy. So we'll discuss that, as well as a report coming out saying that the Orlando Magic are willing to give Fred VanVleet some serious money this off season, and Scottie Barnes getting disrespected in a little redraft. So before we dive into the news, we do want to keep announcing that we have a massive giveaway we're doing in the this week, right? We're going to do in the next couple days, because our sponsor CoolBet, they're helping us out, and they're helping you guys get 2 free tickets to the Toronto Raptors Chicago Bulls game on February 28th in Toronto. So if you guys want a chance to be entered in the giveaway for 2 free tickets, promoted by CoolBet, definitely sign up for CoolBet and use the form down below in the description, as well as the pinned comment. Just put your name, your email, and then your free sign up, a little screenshot showing that you signed up for CoolBet. It's absolutely free to sign up to. It's a sports book regulated in Ontario, available all across Canada, and get the best betting lines on really anything regarding the Toronto Raptors, NBA, just any really sport in general. So shout out to CoolBet for supporting the podcast and getting you guys some free tickets. But let's dive into the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is a massive Raptors injury, a few Raptors massive injury updates. So Toronto Raptors have obviously, like many teams this year, dealt with some serious injuries to some key players, and the big one has been OG Anunoby, who has been out for basically the past month with a wrist injury. And we have some update regarding his injury situation, as according to Josh Lewenberg, Anunoby, Trent, and Thaddeus Young all participated in Raptors practice today, and Nick Nurse said that they all looked healthy and ready to go. He expects them to play Thursday versus New Orleans. So according to Coach Nurse, according to Josh Lewenberg, he expects all 3 of those guys to be back in the lineup come this Thursday. Now, that has led to some questions regarding who's going to be in our starting lineups? What are the rotations going to look like? Because even after the acquisition of Jakob Poeltl, and we did have Adrian Griffin coach a couple games, there wasn't a huge swing in terms of, bench guys getting more run, different players. We did see Delano Banton get some opportunities. We did see, Malachi Flynn be back into the rotation. So some bench guys were getting some run, but there wasn't a major difference in terms of any guys in the starting unit, especially where OG was out. Trent was dealing with some injuries. Precious was dealing with some injuries. I believe they both played in all the games, but, there was some injury situations going on. But now with a fully healthy contingent, with the exception of Otto Porter Jr., generally this season, we've had our starting lineup of Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, Scottie Barnes, as well as Pascal Siakam, right? Precious Achiuwa, the float in there and whatnot. But now with the pickup of Jakob Poeltl, I imagine with how well the Toronto Raptors have looked, with Big Yak out there running the 5 spot for this team, I don't think he's going to be taken to the bench, even though he did come off the bench for his first game with the Toronto Raptors. But I think he's going to be a consistent piece in that starting lineup. So who's really going to get moved to the bench right now? Could Nick Nurse use the excuse of maybe, OG, you've been dealing with this wrist injury, we'll bring you in easy, we'll ease you in back to action, right, take you off the bench. But given OG's from multiple reports, multiple guys, especially during the trade deadline, wanting a bigger role, I don't imagine he'd be too hyped, too enchanted with end up coming off the bench. So we'll see if he ends up being brought off the bench maybe for the start, and if that continues, while he's reintegrated into the lineup. But Nick Nurse sort of spoke on this as well in his quotes. Josh Lewenberg summed it all up, saying, sounds like the plan is to ease those guys back, especially Anunoby, who missed the last 9 games before the break with a wrist injury. Nurse wouldn't say who'll start now that everybody's healthy, said, we'll look at it, we got some decisions to make, but they're good decisions, essentially inferring to the fact that they have a lot of talent, a lot of guys that could potentially be in the lineup and stuff. So Nurse had that to say. Lewenberg went on to say, Anunoby, who's been out for nearly a month, is among the last Raptors players on the floor, getting some extra post-practice work today, along with others, Christian Koloko and newest Raptor, Jakob Poeltl. So OG's trying to get back into, game form, getting his touch back. Obviously, wrist injuries, it's a tough spot to sort of come back from. You shoot most of your shots, especially OG with that right hand, right wrist. But I'm not sure which wrist it is, but they do have an effect on all the jump shots. But It's going to be a thing to follow. It's going to be a thing to watch regarding the whole Toronto Raptors rotations following this season, right? We haven't had that much depth this year, but we have been pretty top heavy. And one of our top 6 guys being taken out of the starting unit, but I know Gary Trent Jr. has been out of the lineup for a little bit this season. You know, the starting lineup, he was put to the bench, but he played so well, he had to be put back into that starting unit. It's going to be interesting to see. And OG, you know, his stats this season, 17 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, 2 assists. Going to be tough to keep him out as well. So let me know in the comments who you guys think should be moved to the bench. And I know a guy a lot of you guys probably are going to say, you know, should be moved to the bench, given how our comment section has read in recent weeks, recent months, is our next guy who we're going to talk about. And it's about Fred VanVleet and the Magic offering him serious money this offseason. Now, I've made it known, I'm not a guy that's hating on Fred VanVleet. I'm not a guy that thinks he's trash, that thinks he's garbage, that thinks we should let him go for nothing. And I was vocal about how I was shocked the Toronto Raptors were even contemplating trading him, you know, to the Milwaukee Bucks for Grayson Allen and a first-round pick, or to the LA Clippers for a first and Terrence Mann. I just didn't see the value. That is a solid return for Fred. But the one worry with Fred VanVleet is this offseason and whether or not the Toronto Raptors will be able to sort of bring him back, right? Bring him back on decent money, you know, a contract that's reasonable given all the different players that we have to pay in the coming seasons, and the fact that this core group just hasn't been able to, you know, be a top seed in the Eastern Conference. Maybe we'll be able to push it, especially with the true center. Well, the next few weeks will be very telling on that front, but especially one team has been on the Toronto Raptors radar in terms of a potential suitor for Fred VanVleet this offseason is the Orlando Magic, as multiple reports, and now after the trade deadline, Jake Fisher once again came out and said the Orlando Magic are willing to talk serious money with Fred VanVleet this summer. And previous reports have indicated, you know, 30 to 35 million annually for the Toronto Raptors point guard, who this season, stats haven't been bad by any means, but again, 20 points per game, 7 assists, right? Box score wise, 1.6 steals, haven't been that horrible. You look at the efficiency, you know, 39% from the field, 34% from the three-point line. Not the greatest numbers on that front, but they have been steadily increasing. And a lot of people are saying, oh, Fred VanVleet's taking a bunch of shots. You know, he's not creating as much. Now, he did have that big 15-assist game right before the All-Star break. So maybe with the insertion of Jakob Poeltl into the starting lineup or into this team, Fred VanVleet might be able to show off his point guard skills a little bit more than usual. But this is a little bit wild because obviously Fred VanVleet didn't have that much value ahead of this year's trade deadline. So some people were speculating, hey, what does big money really mean from the Orlando Magic? Is this just a ploy? Maybe they're going to try and trade for him at the deadline. Would a team actually, you know, be that willing to give Fred VanVleet that type of contract if the Raptors couldn't even trade him for a Grayson Allen and a pick during this year's trade deadline, right? Like a role player and a bad draft pick, right? So that's some people's heads are turned, but we sort of see that maybe this specific player in the market, you know, Fred VanVleet and the Orlando Magic, that possibility hurt his trade value ahead of this deadline because the Magic seem content to give him a very, very big contract. So the Raptors, if they don't want their, you know, point guard, was an all-star last season, to walk for nothing, you know, this year, then they're going to have to pay a serious bag to Fred, probably in the $30 million per year range. You know, the Magic, they just, they made some shakeups during this trade deadline. They have some young players that we'll talk about in the next segment, but I don't know. The Toronto Raptors, it's going to be tough to give that type of money for Fred VanVleet, especially, you know, forget the offensive end, because I still believe in Fred VanVleet's ability on the offensive end, and it's the defense that's really been the issue this season. Now, he did, from the eye test, right? He has looked a little bit better in the last few games, and he's talked about how he's feeling healthier, he's feeling a little bit readier to go, right? He hasn't been a lockdown guy by any means. You know, he's not clamping up other teams' opposing point guards like he did Steph Curry in the NBA Finals, but he hasn't been getting blown by as much. It hasn't been as egregious. Fred VanVleet struggles at the point of attack on the defensive end, right? At the, you know, the head of the defense, right? In the most recent outing. So keep a lookout for, one, Fred VanVleet's defensive abilities, you know, to close out the seasons. Maybe it was just injuries, nagging injuries, carrying too much of a load for this season to really be effective out there on the defensive end. And two, just consistently shooting the basketball and the ability to facilitate players on the offensive end. So I don't know. Let me know in the comment section if you guys want to give Fred VanVleet that type of bag this offseason. But the next thing we're taking a look at is Scottie Barnes getting disrespected again in a redraft. Now, I've heard a lot of praise for a guy in Franz Wagner this season, and it's well deserved. Franz has been having a solid year, for the Orlando Magic, putting up some solid shooting splits. The Magic have also been better in recent weeks as well. No hate to Franz Wagner on this podcast, but there's also been a lot of roasting of Scottie Barnes this year, especially where he was very hyped up by Raptors fans, especially. Last year after he won the Rookie of the Year over a guy like Evan Mobley, who himself hasn't been that tremendous, has kind of taken hit a rookie or second year sophomore slump, this year. And I, again, think Evan Mobley's going to be great. But FanDuel did a little redraft in terms of, putting their opinions out. And, they don't have the IQ like Coolbeck, because they basically threw this as their redraft split, saying, putting Evan Mobley at number 1, Franz Wagner at number 2, Cade at number 3, and then Scottie Barnes still at number 4, and then ahead of Jalen Green, Josh Giddey, Şengün, a few guys right there. So, in this hypothetical world, at least the Toronto Raptors are able to keep Scottie Barnes at the 4th pick. But, and you look at Scottie Barnes' stats, for as talked about it has been, Scottie Barnes regressed this season, he's trash, all that sort of stuff. But you look at Scottie Barnes' stats on the season, 16 points per game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, pretty efficient from the field, 46% from the field, getting a steal a night, a block a night, and 30% from the three-point line. Obviously, Scottie Barnes is an elite shooter, right? The free throw percentage isn't that elite, but you compare those stats to a guy in Franz Wagner, who's taken over the world, who should be the 2nd pick in this sort of redraft, right? For everyone saying it's better than Scottie Barnes, right? Stats aren't, 19 points per game, more points per game, but less rebounds at 4 a game. 3.5 assists. He's not facilitating like Scottie Barnes. Not getting blocks on the defensive end like Scottie. Not as effective of a defender at the point of attack. And the field goal percentage, sure. Let's get those stats. That disappeared too quickly on me as I'm ranting on here. Obviously the 3-point percentage is more effective, but field goal wise, he's only 1% better. Franz Wagner right now is definitely a better scorer than Scottie Barnes. I will not deflect that. I will not try to argue that in terms of favor for Scottie Barnes, but everything else, Scottie really does better. And then the athletic potential, the passing vision, the intangibles as a basketball player, right? The stuff that's hard to develop, that's hard to teach. Scottie Barnes has a lot of those things over Franz Wagner. So we're talking about a redraft. We're talking about something, you're projecting players out into the future. The fact that Franz is there ahead of a Scottie Barnes is confusing. And then you have Evan Mobley at number 1, right? Who, again, statistically wise, hasn't taken a major step forward. Sure, the Cavs have been better than the Toronto Raptors this season, so you do have to give credit there. Mobley's been a big piece of that and all that, but, Mobley's dealt with some injuries. Cade's dealt with some injuries. If you're projecting out to the future, right? If you're projecting out to the future, you're looking ahead 3, 4, 5 seasons. Sure, I get the argument more of Evan Mobley's Cade Cunningham over Scottie Barnes, right? I get it. Even though I probably wouldn't argue it, but I'm a Raptors homer. It is what it is. If you're projecting out, that's why you have Mobley and Cade ahead of Scottie Barnes. But if you're just looking at core, intangibles, all that sort of stuff, players right now, right? Scottie should be ahead of those guys. So I'm just confused by this ranking. Maybe they're trying to get Raptors fans like me riled up. But do you think Scottie Barnes is being disrespected in this list? Let me know in the comment section below. But the final thing we're taking a look at is CNN absolutely butchering Pascal Siakam's name in a segment. And, we've heard some bad ones, right? Pascal Siakam from, from Skip Bayless. Right? A lot of ESPN reporters always are butchering Pascal's name. But this might be the worst. This might be the funniest I've seen. So I'll just show it out here now.
He's not the only All-Star with ties to Africa. The Raptors' Pascal Siakam and also Joel.
That's tough. But folks, you guys are the best for making this far. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to be entered to win 2 free tickets for the Toronto Raptors Chicago Bulls game February 28th, definitely use the form down below. Sign up for CoolBet. Completely free to do. Right, you made this far in the video. You're a diehard Raptors fan. You want tickets there, right? Sign up for CoolBet Sports Podcast as well. But you guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.